So, in having some conversations with developers recently, I've come to learn that there's still a lot of confusion about test-driven development. And so I wanted to create this video to kind of differentiate test-driven development from just writing tests with code, and even, it being different than unit testing. Right? So what test-driven development means is that, you write your test first, then you write your code, right? Which may not seem possible, but I'm going to show you how it's done here in a unscripted example. So I have a new feature I need to create, and this is a real feature that I'm creating for real software for real customer. And I've never created this feature before. Not exactly sure how it'll, come out. Haven't really done much planning here, but that's okay. I can still write tests before I even actually do the design, right? So I don't need to design anything. So the first thing I need to do is, to write a test, right? So a lot of developers, when they decided to create a new feature, I'm in a CodeIgniter application, and they would come and they would add a new class here. But that would not be test-driven development, all right? So in test-driven development, what you do is come here to your tests, and first thing you would do is, create a test, right? You wouldn't create a class in the application. You would create a test because you're doing test-driven development. So let's go ahead and start then. I'm going to do it here in PHP, and we'll see how it works out. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to call this application org setting test. Right, so I'm extending a database test case, which extends the PHP unit extension database test case. So if you don't know about DB unit for an extension for PHP unit, it's a pretty good tool for testing queries on the database. So the class I'm going to be creating is going to save data to a database. So that's why I'm going to use DB unit, right? So just to give you some background info. Alright, so I'm going to look at some other tests here. There's already some information. It's kind of like a template that I can use. So here's a class I'm going to load. So this class doesn't exist yet, but don't worry. Alright, and so I'm actually going to I'm going to change it. I'm going to call it org setting query test. And let me just change the test here. So you can see the type hinting is not giving me the option for this class because again it doesn't exist. That's alright. So something about DBUnit is there's a lot of different ways to load data sets. I'm actually going to use the XML method because I feel it's the most flexible and easiest to change. So basically just create a data set here. Right. And you can find more information about this online. So the data set is empty right now. I'm going to add a table and load some data with the XML automatically through the database test case framework. So don't worry, it's going to happen. Right, that's the wrong one. So data. Alright, so I kind of got the initial outline set up here. So first thing I need to do is write a test. So when I write the test, I need to think about what I'm trying to accomplish. Right? So to me, the first thing I could accomplish with the org setting query is to get all of the settings for an organization. Right? So let's say, there's some custom settings for an organization. So I want to say test get settings for org. Right? So I'm going to need I may have different organizations that I want to do tests for. So I'm going to use a data provider. I don't remember if this is the pattern that I used. So let me check. Connection count. Right. So if you don't know about data providers, you'll have to go check them out. Just put the comment there. That's not necessary, but this is necessary. So I need to put at data provider, and I need to put the name. So PHP unit is going to return a list of data, whatever I send it. Alright, so I need to send it at least one argument. So I'm going to put the org ID. So for each set of data, it's going to pass in one parameter, right? So this is going to be the org ID. Alright, so when I call get settings for org, let's say for a particular organization, right, which I'm going to load settings into the database through this configuration file. Let's say there's supposed to be 3 settings, right? So then maybe I would put settings count. So for the first org, there should be 3. For org ID 1, there should be 3 settings. So then I would say this cert count, expected count, count, and now I need to get the settings. So I need to do this query get settings for org ID. Alright, so this class doesn't exist, query is going to be null, so this is definitely going to fail. Alright, so let's go ahead and just run it. Watch that happen. Don't worry about that. Oh, something is not right. So, as we can see here, right, the test is supposed to be failing, but it's not. So this is a bad test right now. So something's wrong. So the most important part about test-driven development is that if you haven't implemented anything, the test should fail. Right? And if it doesn't fail before it passes, you don't know if it ever will fail. And if it doesn't ever fail, that's a useless test. Right? The test has to be able to fail. Right? So something's going on here. I'm not sure. Let's figure it out. Alright. So it looks like I got it to run. There's an error here. And it says, unable to locate the model that you've specified, application org setting query. Right? So to get the test to fail now, it looks like I actually have to go and create this class. Right? So my goal is to get this thing to fail. That's what I want. So now I'm going to create the class. Alright, let's see if it fails now. Alright, so this is happening because there's no data inside of my data set, right? So I passed it the data set, but I didn't put anything in there. So now, you know, the test still isn't failing correctly, right? It's just stopped. So I need to I need to get the data into the database. So I think I may have already set up the table. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like I can use this one. Yeah, that's the one I want. So you don't have to have already set up the table. You can do it after you write the test, obviously. Right? So I just put that there. And then I need to specify the values. Org ID, setting ID, value. Right, so for each one of these here, it's going to create one row. So I'm looking for 3 for org ID 1. Let's just say this is 1, 2, 3. Now, it's not checking that there's any values, so the values could all be blank, and that's fine for now. So let's see if we can get it to stop throwing this exception here. Alright, so it looks like it's still broken, right? So there's one error. Alright, let's see what's happening. And I got a comment on my last video that I made like this, that this was more about, you know, it looked more like troubleshooting, right, defects. As you can see, there's no defects here, okay? The feature is not yet implemented, right? So I'm not troubleshooting, right? I'm writing failing tests first, right? So don't make that comment, all right? Alright, so it's saying open time application dash test org settings does not exist. Okay, right. So I think the reason is because this database is not the table or the database that I'm running it against. So I need to put the table in this database. So let's do that. So that should have put the table in there. Let's run it again. Alright, so now it's saying, hey, call to undefined method, application org settings, get settings for org, right? So it's saying to me, hey, you don't have a feature called get settings for org, right? I know I don't, right? There's no function there called that. So now I'm going to make the function. Right? As I passed in, as I can see, I passed in an org ID, right? Because I want to pass in an org ID and get all the settings for the org. That's my goal. So I receive an org ID. Now, that's kind of like my outline for the function. So let's run the test again. Alright, so now it's saying, hey, the assert count, right, must be, an integer. And the reason why it's not an integer is because the result here is being returned is null, right? It doesn't work. So let's go ahead and return just like an empty array. Alright, so undefined variable count. So something's going wrong here. So it shouldn't be saying that. Oh, see, settings count and count didn't match. Alright. So let's change that. Alright, perfect. This is fantastic. The test is now actually failing. Right? So it says failing asserting that the actual size 0 matched expected 3. Right? So there should be 3 rows of data that this class, this query class, is going to get me. Right? But it's just returning an empty array. So it's not going to get anything. So now I have to, now that I wrote the test, now I'm going to actually build the function. I'm going to build the feature. Right? So let me do that. So I may not need that. Alright, so I do need a where clause here. Right, and to understand these functions that I'm using, you'll need to understand CodeIgniter's active record. That's one way to do it. Alright, so I think I'm good to go here. Looks like this has been implemented. Oh, made a mistake here. So I think my test will pass. Let's see if it does. Oh, something happened. Oh, forgot to load application org setting. Right, so I'll need to do that here. Actually, I'm going to load this. Where should I load this? Let me load it here. Found on line 28. Alright, so as you can see, I'm trying to get the code to run here. So I'm testing it, and I'm discovering my errors along the way, which I could actually do inside of a web browser too, but this is more straightforward. Application org setting query on line 28. That's not the right class. Right here. Ah, yes. So I should really do it here instead. Right. So CodeIgniter doesn't really like to use constructors, so that's why it's complaining here. So I'm going to have to change this to load it some other way. There we go. Let's try it out now. Not sure why it's doing this. Okay. So some of the errors are hard to find when you have CodeIgniter hooked up to PHP unit, so that's why I had to get in the debugger. Undefined index setting ID. Okay. So it's saying that there's no index here called org ID. Why is that? I'm somehow only getting the org ID. I think I know what I'm doing. I forgot to separate these values. So yeah, should run now. Alright, so it looks like the test passed. Right? There was 3 settings. Now, if I was to go back to my test here and I change this to 2, if I run it again, it should fail. And it did. Right? So it says failed asserting that actual size matches expected size 2. Right? And that's because in the table it's being loaded with 3 values. If I changed, let's say I had another organization here, right, just to make sure it's not selecting all organizations, right, actually can change this to 2. So I'm adding another one, so it should still pass, or it should still fail. So now I have another failing test, change this back to 3, and it passes again, right? So that's what test-driven development is about, all right? The next step for me is to go in here and refactor, right? So for example, I'm going to go ahead and move both of these classes to a new folder because they're related. And I'm going to delete them. And my test is going to fail, right? So that's a good thing, right? So now I don't have to be afraid to move stuff around because I know as soon as I moved it, it doesn't work, right? So I just need to come back in here. I need to change the location that it's getting loaded from, which is, where is it? Sorry, I gotta find it. I closed it. Alright, so I gotta say load this thing, application. That's a new location. And I also gotta go into my test. Change the location. Right, so now the test passes again, right? So the process is write a failing test, get the test to pass, and then refactor, right? So each time you refactor, test is going to break, fix the code, fix the test until the test passes, right? So that's TDD, right? It's not, unit testing is involved in this, right? But it's important that you follow the exact process. Otherwise, you're not going to get good quality tests. Thanks.